So I received notice in October that my apartment was raising my rent by $200 in a single year, starting in December. I like renting, genuinely, because I can just call them and say something's broken, and then I come home and it's fixed. I've never had a problem, but a 20% rise in rent in 1 year is ridiculous. The morning I opened the rent increase notice, I happened to see a cute manufactured home with a for sale sign on my way to work. I pulled it up on my phone and called the realtor. This was Monday. She indicated the sellers didn't want it shown until Wednesday, and we scheduled a showing. I put in an offer the next day, and they accepted 10 minutes later. Yay for me, I guess, signed and closed 10 days later. It was an incredibly easy transaction and process, and that made me very happy. Well, on my move-in day in early November, the retiree neighbor on my left approached me while I was helping the movers with my stuff, and the first words out of her mouth were, "Are you going to do anything about these leaves that keep blowing into my yard from yours?" Eventually, it came to a head when I told her, "I understand that you like to keep your lawn tidy. Can you at least try to understand that I have been working 60 and 70-hour weeks while moving and I am doing my very best?" The property management company that runs the park straight up told me I was in the clear and not in violation of anything. I've had no contact with her since she realized I'm not going to capitulate to her. This most recent Friday, when we had frigid temperatures and high winds in the evening, I flushed my toilet and realized it wasn't refilling. I tested my taps, no water. It was already too dark, so I went to the store to get water for myself and the cats. In the morning, once it was light out, I put on my coveralls and headed out into the minus 22 degrees Fahrenheit weather to investigate. The water supply comes out of the ground outside of the trailer skirt, then goes through the skirt to the supply. The previous owners had built a well-insulated box around the water supply, but the access hatch was unlocked and cracked open. I sighed, and I called my father and told him I needed to borrow his heating tool. He offered to drive it over, but the weather was so bad with blowing snow that I told him even in his truck, he'd get stuck, so I went trekking over there. I'm fuming the entire way, because I could have sworn I latched that door when I was checking my winterizing list. I could have sworn. Eventually, after 15 minutes of using the heating tool, the water started flowing. I got back inside and got under my blankets to warm up after being in the Arctic conditions for nearly 2 hours at that point. I still can't get over it. I know I latched the door. So on a whim, I propped my laptop in the window and set it up to video record and went on with my day. I woke up Sunday morning to temperatures of minus 33 degrees Fahrenheit weather and went to fill up the cat's water bowl. No water again. What the frick? I put on my coveralls and headed out. The access door was cracked open again. I got the heating device out again and got the water going again. So I checked my laptop, and not 2 hours after I started the laptop recording, the neighbor Karen comes waddling across her driveway and walks over to my trailer. She leans over by the water and messes with the door before waddling back to her trailer. I put on my coat and walked over there with my laptop. When she answers, "Oh hi Op, what brings you over today?" all cheery and two-faced, I just opened my laptop without saying a word and hit play. She just starts stuttering, trying to come up with some BS. I interrupt her and tell her I'll be forwarding it to the office and walk away. On Monday, the office called me and informed me that they would be addressing the issue. They mentioned that it would be incredibly helpful if there was a police report. I gladly called the non-emergency line and scheduled a time for an officer to come out after work. The cops arrived just as I was walking home. We went in, and I detailed everything and showed them the video. They wanted a copy, so I gave it to them. They asked me to show them the water line, so we headed out there. They took some photos while we were outside. The entire time we were there, Karen was looking out her kitchen window. They noticed she was home as well and offered to trespass her. I headed back in, and they eventually knocked, telling me they spoke to her and trespassed her. They gave me a copy of the police report number and forwarded it to the office. While we were out there, a neighbor couple across the street was outside and asked me if everything was okay. I said it was, that I had video proof that Karen had actually opened my water access to freeze my pipes, and their eyes went wide. Their cover over the water line was also removed, broken off, and his water line froze too on Friday, and the repairs were broken again on Saturday. It turns out Karen has an ongoing beef with them because they have a pride flag they refuse to take down. So the police went over there to get their statements too. Karen's husband came home an hour ago, then came over shortly after to ask me to retract my complaint against them with the office as a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? Your wife was intending to destroy my water lines in the middle of a winter storm, which would have cost me thousands of dollars to fix. He pulls out his checkbook. So what's this going to cost me? I reply, well, I bought the place for $40K, so let's call it an even $45K, and I'll straight up tell the office I fabricated the entire thing. He said he was serious, and I said I was too. He says they're on the verge of being evicted and kicked off the lot, and that she has problems. Sounds like the neighbors and I should go in on a bunch of security cameras to ensure that happens then. So we'll see. I wasn't going to set up my server, but I'm going to do that tonight with a couple of my webcams on some Raspberry Pi computers. I just can't trust this woman. All because of some leaves and a pride flag. Update 1. Well, it's been interesting. I installed 4 cameras, 1 on each corner of my trailer and 1 on my covered porch. I took my other cameras and installed them over at the neighbors across the street who had their water line frozen too. She watched me install them from her kitchen window and waddled over a little later to look at them and flip me off. She has been repeatedly flipping off at the cameras. On trash day last week, she cheerfully asked me to help her move her trash cans to the curb when I was walking by with my groceries. I'll admit I snorted and was petty. I put my groceries down and went to every lot on the street and pulled their trash to the curb except for hers. The nice old lady across the street invited me to Rummikub night. At first, I declined. She said they were going to dish about Karen. I said I already had my shoes off and that I was in for the night. She then said, we drink wine, smoke green, and play rummy cube. Okay, I'll get my shoes. These ladies were awesome. Great batch of new friends acquired. I got all the gossip about Karen, and my head was spinning after it all, so here are some highlights. Karen has 4 adult children. Her 3 daughters haven't spoken to her in more than 12 years. The last daughter to speak to her actually lived on the other side of my place, but they had a falling out so huge that her daughter sold her home and moved across town to get away from her. Her son is the only one in the family speaking to her. Karen used to be part of another monthly gathering of a bunch of retirees in the community, but she was kicked out after she kept going on tirades about the guy who owned my place before and harassing the rainbow couple that lived on the street. The beef she had with the previous owner of my place started over, of all things, yard waste. Grass clippings, to be exact, so at least she's reliable, I suppose. It also explains her deal with the leaves. In response to her BS about him leaving grass clippings on the lawn, he also stopped raking up leaves. So that explains that in a way. In short, she's just a toxic old no-life woman who gets off on starting beef with her neighbors. And her husband paying people off is also apparently a theme, as well as he tried to do with me. The most egregious thing that made my blood boil just hearing it. A few years ago, she went off on this rant about a young guy in the park walking his dog twice every day, and she kept going on about not letting the dog take a dump on the grass. Well, one day the dog decided to relieve itself there, and as the guy was picking up his dog's waste, she maced both of them with pepper spray. Hubby paid the guy off. The lady hosting Rummy Night talks to Karen. She says that Karen was complaining about me putting up cameras and how gauche it makes the neighborhood look. After taking a fat rip, she says, so I say to her, Karen honey, if you're so worried about what's gauche, you probably shouldn't have tried to freeze his pipes in the middle of the worst winter storm we've had this decade, and then he wouldn't be installing cameras to protect his property. Apparently, Karen's response to that was that I should have taken care of my leaves. So Karen hates grass clippings, leaves, rainbows, and being a decent human being. She's been taken care of by her husband covering up her BS, and she's just so incredibly toxic that 3 of her own children don't speak to her or let her grandchildren see her. As far as the property managers go, I was assured they are taking this very seriously but cannot disclose what actions they are taking to me. Fortunately, Karen can't help herself from gossiping or throwing herself under the bus, and after another fat rip, the Rummy host told me that she received a letter from their lawyers with a correct or quit notice that any more complaints will result in an eviction. So yeah. I'm looking forward to seeing how long she can last before getting evicted, but not as much as I'm looking forward to hosting these awesome old ladies this Friday. I'm going to teach them how to play Settlers of Catan.